What is going on, gardeners? Today I am here in my yard with an awesome video, something that I have nerded out, geeked out about lately, which is the soil. I want to talk about the soil. I always talk about the soil, and you may be wondering, all right, you say you have to get the soil right, but what does that mean and how do I do it? So today I'm going to give you 5 ways that you right now in your own yard can start improving and working on your soil. 5 ways, and then at the end, if you stick around, I'm gonna give you one bonus tip on top of those 5. But these 5 things are things that you can go out into your yard right now and start doing and start seeing an immediate improvement on your soil. Improved soil means you can grow things better. Once you have an awesome soil, you can pretty much grow anything that you want to. Until you have the right soil, it's going to be very hard to grow anything at all. So let's talk about the 5 things that you can do right now to start improving your soil. All right, so the first thing you can do to start improving your soil now is chop and drop. You've probably heard of chop and drop. I also like to talk about the law of returns. So first of all, let's talk about chop and drop. What does that mean? It simply means when you're back here trimming any of your stuff in your yard, whatever you chop, whatever you trim goes right back down to the ground. When you're cutting your lawn, if you have a lawn, all those grass clippings go right back down onto the ground. Whatever is organic and living in your yard stays organic and living in your yard. It stays in your yard. Don't use the city barrel. Don't let it go off to the landfill where it's not going to do any good. Now, let's talk about law of return and why that matters. Anything that comes from your yard needs to be returned back into the ground, or else there is going to be a mineral or some type of deficiency in your soil. Why is this? Anytime anything grows from the ground, it is pulling nutrients from the ground and pulling them up into your plants. That's how your plants grow. So now you are trimming those plants, trees, whatever it may be, grass, and you are removing it from the ground, and the soil cannot be replenished. Those living things, the nutrients, everything cannot be returned to the ground if you ship it away to a landfill. However, if you let it fall right back down to the ground, it is going to return to the soil where it came from, and that cycle is going to continue, right? If you don't do that, then your other option is you have to fertilize. And unfortunately, in most cases, almost all cases, especially in urban gardening, you are going to have to add some type of fertilizer, right? You should be practicing the law of return and putting everything back into the ground. That's going to help build your soil quickly. But in addition to that, organically and naturally, you're going to have to add fertilizer. Now, what type of fertilizer do you add? Well, get a soil test. That way you don't have to guess. You can simply get a soil test. It will tell you what needs to be added, and then you add it. So with those 2 things, fertilizing exactly what you need and practicing law of returns or chop and drop, that is the first thing and the easiest thing and the cheapest and freest thing you can do to start building the soil in your yard. Chop and drop. All right, and the second thing you can do to start building the soil in your yard is to plant a nitrogen fixing ground cover. Nitrogen fixing ground cover. Things like alfalfa, things like clover. Clover is the easiest thing because it grows in most gardening zones. You can grow clover. There's also other things, legumes, things to that nature that you can plant that are nitrogen fixing, meaning it is creating more nitrogen in the ground. Nitrogen is good for your soil. That is what will start to build the soil by planting these ground covers. Bare soil is unhealthy soil. Soil never wants to be bare for a number of different reasons. One, it's easily damaged by the sun and even by raindrops. It sounds silly, but soil life is damaged by raindrops. These nitrogen fixing plants, they're not actually pumping nitrogen into the ground, but what they are doing instead is they are creating a habitat for bacteria, nitrogen fixing bacteria. So you plant these things, they pull in this bacteria, the bacteria fixes the nitrogen and makes it available to the other plants. So you're planting this ground cover, this cover crop, and it is creating a habitat for this bacteria that is fixing the nitrogen, and then it is making that nitrogen available to all the different plants all around your yard. So the more nitrogen fixing plants and ground cover you can plant, the better. It's going to help jumpstart and get that natural soil life going in your soil in your ground, which is going to be feeding the plants. Now, if you don't have a nitrogen fixing ground cover that you want, really any ground cover is good because again, bare soil is not good. It is not healthy. Anytime you can get something growing on top of the ground, it is going to be better than having nothing at all. And the third thing you can do, and don't forget to stick around for the tip, but the third thing you can do to start improving your soil now is to use wood chips. Yes, wood chips. That's been the big buzzword for the past few years, especially here in the Desert Southwest in the Phoenix gardening community, is wood chips. I would say a ground cover, especially a nitrogen fixing ground cover like we just talked about, is better than wood chips. However, wood chips are very good, and anywhere you don't have something growing, again, it should not be bare soil. Let's add wood chips. Now, how much you add depends on the area in the country or in the world where you're at. Here in the Desert Southwest, there is hardly any organic material in the soil, like hardly any at all, probably like 0.5%, right? Unless you naturally start adding it. Wood chips starts that process of adding organic matter to the ground. Wood chips is great because, again, it is something organic that plant soil life biology starts eating and breaking down. It attracts bugs, good bugs, that break that down. It attracts earthworms. We love earthworms. It attracts all types of microorganisms that start feeding on those wood chips, breaking them down and pulling those nutrients into the ground, which is going to improve the soil. And all of this, remember, the whole point is to making the soil come to life. We want life in the soil. If you're a gardener and you're scared of bugs, I'm sorry, but if you're ever going to be successful, you have to get over your fear of bugs. Bugs, life in general, is what makes a soil a happy soil and what makes it a healthy soil. So by adding wood chips, we're creating that soil biology. On top of that, especially again here in the Desert Southwest where it's very hot, where we don't have lots of water, where the water evaporates quickly, wood chips hold in that moisture, especially if we add a couple feet of wood chips, that holds in that moisture and it allows us to not have to water so much. So we're accomplishing two things. We're bringing the soil to life and we're also not having to water nearly as much. So wood chips is something that you can easily do. I know here in the Phoenix area, there's a website called, I think like chipdrop.com. You can go there and these different tree trimming companies, they will go and post their big loads trucks that they have that they'll come and drop off at your house for free, because otherwise they have to take it to the landfill, they have to pay. So if they can drop it at your house for free, they will, and it's a win-win. Just know if you do that, you're gonna have a huge pile in your front yard. You're gonna have to wheelbarrow back, or hopefully you have some better way, but you're gonna have to wheelbarrow back. It's gonna be some manual labor. But I would guess in most scenarios, in most places around the world, you can find tree trimming companies that will give you free wood chips. And the fourth thing, we're getting down the list, guys, the fourth thing that you can do to start improving and building your soil now is to stop using synthetic fertilizer. That one's easy. You don't have to do anything. Just stop using synthetic fertilizer. So we've talked about bringing the soil back to life and how you do that. Synthetic fertilizers actually halts all of that progress and it kills all of that soil life. Most synthetic fertilizer is there to go and directly affect the roots of the plants in the ground, but it's doing so at the expense of killing all of the soil biology. And so yes, you may see an immediate improvement, and a very good improvement, when you first add synthetic fertilizer. But what you're doing is you're slowly killing the soil biology, which is not going to be there to feed your plants. So in 6 months, you're gonna have to add more synthetic fertilizer. It's gonna kill more soil life. So you're gonna have to add more and more and more until soon your soil is completely dead. And you're having to add insane amounts of synthetic fertilizer to be able to get the results that you want. Now, one, it's not good to kill the soil life, but two, as gardeners, if you're anything like me, anytime you can find shortcuts and not add more work for yourself, that's better. If you keep adding synthetic fertilizer, over time, you're adding more and more work for yourself because, again, you're gonna have to keep adding more fertilizer more often. If you work to build the soil using the things that we've already referenced, with time, you'll have to do less and less work because your soil and the life inside of it will be doing all of the work for you. So this is an easy one. You don't have to do anything, just stop using synthetic fertilizer. The fifth and final way, don't forget about the bonus tip coming up, but the fifth and final way that you can start improving and building the soil in your yard is to add compost. Yes, add compost, and guess what? Just like everything we've talked about, adding compost adds life to your soil. Good compost, living compost, compost from a reputable source, fresh compost has life inside of it. It has fungi, bacteria, all these microorganisms that once you bring that compost and put it by your trees, by your plants, into your yard, it inoculates your soil and it brings all of that life into your soil and it begins to spread. And so by using compost, you can instantly bring all of that life into your soil. And again, from there, it will just spread. If you're looking, we just talked about not using synthetic fertilizer. So if you're looking and wondering, what should I use? Compost, right? We have our ground cover, we have our wood chips, we have compost. Now things are looking really good. We're bringing lots of life into our soil. So find a reputable source in your area, something that's fresh. Don't buy the bag stuff from big box stores or things to that nature. That stuff, it's gonna be dead after a while, right? We're talking about life here. And if it's inside of a plastic bag that's sealed off and getting no air, that life is going to die. So don't just go to the big box store and buy compost, but find a reputable source in your area. I'm sure there's one somewhere close, and go and get their compost and use that to bring your soil to life. All right, guys, so that is the 5 things that you can start doing right now. Right now, anybody can do it. You don't have to have technical knowledge. It's easy, it's simple. Those are the 5 things that you can start doing right now to build your soil. Now the fifth, and now the bonus tip on top of all 5 of those, here it comes. Are you ready for it? The bonus tip is to watch the pH level of your soil. Why does this matter? Without getting too technical, 1, because I'm not smart enough, and 2, because it doesn't matter. If the pH is not at the right level, if it's too high or too low, here in the desert Southwest, we deal with a high pH, very alkaline. But if it's too high or too low, it doesn't matter how much soil biology is there. It doesn't matter what nutrients are in the ground. If the soil pH is not where it needs to be, your tree and plants cannot uptake those nutrients because the pH level is stopping them. It's prohibiting them to be in the right form and for your plants to be able to pull those nutrients up into their systems. So how do we know what your pH is and how do you know what you need to do? Well, I mentioned earlier, getting a soil test. A soil test will tell you what your pH is, and then it will also, from a good soil lab, it will tell you what you need to do to get that pH down. Here again in the desert Southwest, where the soil pH is very high, we add sulfur. I do it maybe 3 times a year, add sulfur. And then also on top of that, organic matter with time will help lower the pH, right? If you're in an area where it's too low, I don't have tons of experience in that, so find other local gardeners in your community and ask them what they're doing to bring the pH up. But that is a huge thing. You don't want to do all of this work and have all the nutrients there and then have the pH not be correct and your plants still look bad. So on top of those 5 things, make sure your soil pH is in the right level, in the right spot. So that is it, everybody. This is stuff that you can all go out and do today. This is stuff, I don't want to get too tree huggerish, but this is stuff that is going to save the world, right? Our soil is rapidly depleting before our eyes, desertification. Deserts all yearly, millions of acres of land that is turning into desert, which means the soil is dying. We can have a huge impact in our own yards by doing these 5 things, and hopefully we can spread that message to everybody else so that we can start to regenerate our soil, because without our soil, we have no plants. Without our plants, we have no food. Without food, Earth or humans do not exist. So go out today and start doing those 5 things. If you have any other tips, I want to hear them. Tell us where you're at and tell us what you're doing. Comment down below, and I'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.